Why does everything you buy seem to climb in price overnight, but almost never fall back to where it started? Why does every receipt feel heavier, even when the news promises things are getting better? If you've ever felt like your money only moves in one direction downward, you're not imagining it. Prices climb like alarms and fall like secrets. And behind that slow, silent drop is a system that behaves like a restricted room, closed, controlled, and built to move far more easily upward than down. You feel it every time a familiar price suddenly becomes the new normal. Every time your wallet adjusts faster than the world does. That shift isn't random. It's the first clue to how modern prices lock into place, how they stay firm long after the pressure fades. And once you understand why your dollar dosen tabun sabak, you won't see the system or you're spending the same way again. Here's the part almost everyone misses. When inflation cools, prices don't automatically slide back down because the system isn't built to move in reverse. Inflation measures the speed of the climb, not the undoing of it. So when the rate slows, it only means the climb is losing momentum, not that any part of it is coming undone. And that matters, because modern prices behave like a door that opens in one direction. Pressure can push them upward, but almost nothing pushes them back down. Companies raise prices when the environment forces their hand, yet once a higher level becomes normal, there's no equal force demanding it retreat. That imbalance is the quiet threat people feel but rarely recognize. A system that resists reversals with the same firmness a restricted room resists entry from the wrong side. So if prices don't fall when inflation cools, and the system itself holds each new level in place, then the real question becomes sharper. What could ever bring them down at all? What most people never notice is the force sitting between inflation and the price you actually pay, the part of the system that behaves like a restricted zone, not because it's secret, but because it operates behind layers most consumers never interact with. Prices don't move freely. They pass through supplier contracts, long-term wage agreements, shipping rates, leases, and operational costs that stay locked in place long after the headlines shift. It's a slow, weighted structure that only moves when enough pressure builds behind it. And once it pushes forward, reversing that direction becomes almost impossible. That SYU grocery bill feels stuck. Even when the news says things are improving, the system reacts slowly on the way up, and even slower on the way down, creating a built-in lag. Your wallet feels long before anyone explains it. And the deeper you look, the clearer it becomes. That lag isn't a flawed at how modern pricing locks itself into place. So if the structure holds firm even after inflation cools, then what force is strong enough to make it shift at all? Here's where the system becomes unmistakable. Every price you see is built on layers that rise quickly, but unwind painfully slow. When costs, home fuel, shipping, ingredients, rent, companies adjust almost instantly just to stay ahead of the pressure. But when those same pressures ease, nothing underneath snaps back. Contracts remain locked at higher rates. Wages don't roll backward. Rent agreements don't shrink. Insurance premiums don't reset. And the cost of updating prices itself becomes another excuse to keep levels where they are. It feels like moving up a staircase with missing steps behind you. Once the system climbs, there's nothing stable to return to. That's why relief never arrives at the same speed as the pain. The structure isn't malfunctioning. It's engineered to hold its position. And once you see how stubborn that upward drift is, the next question becomes impossible to ignore. If the system is designed to resist lowering prices, then what force is powerful enough to push them down at all? Here's the part almost everyone misses. When inflation cools, prices don't automatically slide back down because the system isn't built to move in reverse. Inflation measures the speed of the climb, not the undoing of it. So when the rate slows, it only means the climb is losing momentum, not that any part of it is coming undone. And that matters, because modern prices behave like a door that opens in one direction. Pressure can push them upward, but almost nothing pushes them back down. Companies raise prices when the environment forces their hand, yet once a higher level becomes normal, There's no equal force demanding it retreat. That imbalance is the quiet threat people feel but rarely recognize, a system that resists reversals with the same firmness a restricted room resists entry from the wrong side. So if prices don't fall when inflation cools, and the system itself holds each new level in place, then the real question becomes sharper. What could ever bring them down at all? There's another reason prices stay high, and it has nothing to do with companies. It starts with us. Human psychology locks onto the newest price we pay, not the lower price we used to know. Once a number becomes familiar, even if we hate it, our brains quietly adjust. We stop checking old receipts. We stop remembering where prices used to sit, and that forgetting gives the system room to hold its ground without pressure to move back. A price hike sparks instant outrage, but once that higher number sits long enough, the old price fades, and frustration turns into resignation. That shift, when a temporary spike becomes the new normal, is the moment the system stops moving, and once customers stop pushing back, the entire machine freezes in place, which leads to the next sharper question. If both businesses and consumers accept the new price, then what force actually prevents prices from drifting endlessly upward? If prices rise easily and rarely fall, and both companies and consumers settle into every new level, then something else must be preventing prices from drifting upward forever. That force isn't emotional, and it isn't personal, it's structural. The system relies on one built-in limit. The moment customers finally change their behavior, not complain, change. When people stop buying, switch brands, delay purchases, or simply do without, the entire structure feels it. That quiet resistance is the only counterweight that stops prices from running wild. It isn't dramatic, but it's powerful, and when it shows up, the market has no choice but to adjust. But here's what most viewers never realize. That shift arrives far later than you think, and by the time it does, most high prices have already solidified into the new normal, which leaves one question hanging. If behavior changes are the only real check on endless price drift, why do most people wait until the very end to make them? Most people don't change their behavior until the pain becomes impossible to ignore, and companies quietly count on that delay. That's why the most powerful tool in modern pricing isn't the increase itself. It's the illusion that nothing has really changed. Discounts look the same, even when they cover less. Packaging shifts, portions shrink, labels get louder, all designed to keep your attention on the offer, not the price quietly rising behind it. And once that illusion settles in, something subtle happens. Consumers stop questioning the number and start questioning themselves. Wasn't it always this much? Maybe I'm remembering wrong. That small doubt is what turns a temporary adjustment into a permanent one. And once people stop questioning, prices stop moving. But one piece is still missing, the final mechanism that ensures prices rarely drop once they rise. And that's where the story moves from psychology into structure. Behind every price you see, there's a structural force that moves in only one direction, forward. Economists call it a ratchet effect. Once a price clicks upward, the mechanism that lifted it rarely releases enough pressure to bring it back down. Not because anyone is holding it there, but because the entire system is built like a one-way lock. Costs push up through wages, materials, transportation, contracts, and expectations, each layer catching on the next, like teeth on a gear that turns easily one way and refuses to turn back. When the pressure fades, the gear stops climbing, but it doesn't unwind. It simply holds, and by the time that grip loosens, consumers have adapted. Companies have reshaped their plans, and the higher price has become the baseline everyone builds around. That's why prices feel permanent, not because they can't fall, but because the structure that lifts them has no matching force pulling them down. Which leads to the final question, the one the entire system hinges on. If the ratchet only turns forward, who decides when it turns at all? So who actually decides when the mechanism moves? Here's the truth almost no one considers. The ratchet turns only when enough pressure builds beneath it, not from governments, not from companies, not from headlines, but from millions of small choices made by ordinary people. When enough shoppers delay a purchase, switch to alternatives, wait for sales, or simply walk away, the system feels that shift like weight, tipping a scale. That's the moment when prices stop climbing, when the ratchet hesitates, when the structure finally responds. But here's the part most people never notice. By the time that pressure becomes strong enough to matter, most high prices have already settled into place. The system moved forward long before anyone pushed back. And what looks like a simple price tag is actually the last step in a process that rarely and once you see how slowly the ratchet moves and how rarely it reverses, every price around you starts to look different. Now you choose what we open next. A, inside the vaults that protect America's physical dollar, or B, inside the restricted labs that guard the world's most sensitive materials. Vote A or B in the comments. Access granted.